What if Jon Snow didn't just come back from the dead, but came back with the power to resurrect others? And what if Melisandre helped him do it? Not once, but again and again. The wall would no longer be a boundary. Death would no longer be final. Armies would no longer stay buried. Everything would change. Jon's eyes snapped open, not gasping, not confused, just awake, like he'd never died. Melisandre hovered beside him, lips trembling with disbelief. "He breathes," she whispered. But it wasn't just life that returned. It was power. Something deeper, darker. He didn't feel like himself. Not entirely. Tormund stood frozen in the corner, axe still in hand, eyes wide. Ghost growled low, sensing the shift. The air was cold, colder than it should have been, even for Castle Black. Jon sat up slowly. "Where's Sir Alistair?" he asked, voice low, rough, different. Melisandre stepped back, unsure whether to speak. "He's dead. You remember that, don't you?" Jon nodded. He remembered. Every sword, every stab, every whisper of betrayal. He remembered dying. But now he could feel the deaths. All of them, like voices calling out from beneath the snow. 3 nights passed. Jon didn't eat, didn't sleep. He stared at the flames, always listening. And then, on the 4th day, something happened. The body of a ranger lost beyond the wall was brought back, frozen solid. Jon knelt beside him. Something in his blood screamed. His fingers twitched. Melisandre saw it. "Try," she said. "If R'hllor brought you back, perhaps he left something in you." Jon placed a hand on the man's chest. No words. No chance. Just intent. The man gasped. Tormund dropped his mug. The ranger coughed, flailed, panicked. Where am I?" "Direct address." "Okay. Pause. Did you just feel that? Because what happens next literally changes the entire story of Westeros. And if you think it's going to be sunshine and second chances, you're dead wrong." Jon didn't celebrate. He stood slowly, eyes locked on Melisandre. "What have you done to me?" She shook her head. What the Lord of Light intended. He turned to the resurrected ranger. "Do you remember the other side?" The man nodded, but he was weeping. They were screaming, begging to stay. Jon walked away. That night, he burned the man's body. But word spread. A resurrected man resurrecting others? Castle Black turned from quiet mourning to something else. Some feared him. Others wanted to touch him. They began kneeling. He hated it. "Stop that." He snapped one night as a young recruit bent the knee. "I'm not a king." But they didn't care. "You command the dead," the boy replied. "What else would you be?" "Direct address." Wait. Imagine being a 20-something guy who died, came back, and now your former friends are calling you a god. Sounds cool? Not when every life you return begs to die again. Melisandre warned him. There's a cost. To you. To them. Life isn't a gift, it's a trade. Jon didn't care. Not when the threat beyond the wall grew louder. And when the first wildling child returned from the forest, eyes pale, throat torn, skin freezing, Jon knew the White Walkers were on the move again. But this time, he had something new. He didn't wait for the Night King to come south. He went north, and he didn't go alone. He brought the dead with him. Jon raised 30 rangers from the crypts of Castle Black. Melisandre stood beside him, chanting low, blood dripping from her wrists. The ground shook. Hands burst through the snow. The dead rose, not blue-eyed monsters, but breathing men. Men who once fought for the realm. Tormund stood in awe. "You're building an army of the dead?" Jon looked back. "No, I'm giving death an army of the living." Pause. "Okay, but here's where it gets crazy. He doesn't know how long these men will stay alive. He doesn't know if they'll turn. And he's taking them straight into the cold. As they marched, the cold grew unnatural. The trees stopped whispering. Ghosts snarled without sound. One night, one of the resurrected started bleeding from the eyes. Melisandre watched, mouth tight. Too long. He's slipping. What happens when they slip? Jon asked. They stop being yours. Still, he marched. He saw the first white 2 days later. Then a dozen. then hundreds. The army of the dead met him halfway to the Frostfangs. Jon didn't flinch. He raised his sword. Hold the line. Steel met frost. Fire met bone. And Jon's army held. But it wasn't enough. The Night King appeared atop a hill, mounted on a dead elk, eyes burning blue. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Jon broke formation, charged alone. This was it. But right before the clash, the ground cracked. A hand shot up from the ice. Lyanna Stark, breathing, from beneath the old battlefield where her body had been secretly buried under snow and stone. Jon had resurrected his aunt. She looked at him, confused. You came back? And Jon, he dropped his sword. For just a moment, the Night King smiled. Tension builder. Oh my God, did that just happen? Lyanna Stark just returned from the dead. Jon is frozen. Literally. His entire army is watching. And the Night King makes his move. Lyanna stood barefoot on the frostbitten earth, snowflakes catching in her tangled hair. Her skin was pale, not from death, but from the weight of being pulled back from it. Jon stepped toward her, one foot trembling. I didn't mean to, he whispered. Behind him, the wind howled. The Night King lifted a spear. Cold blue eyes locked not on Jon, but on Lyanna. Melisandre's voice rose behind the line. Jon, she is not meant to be here. But it was too late. The Night King hurled the spear, not at Jon, but at the resurrected woman standing before him. Lyanna didn't flinch. The spear struck, but it shattered into shards of ice before touching her skin. Jon's heart dropped. What are you? He asked. Lyanna blinked slowly, as if confused by the question herself. I don't know, she said, but something answered when you called. And it wasn't just me. The forest behind them trembled. Dozens of figures emerged. Children, warriors, wildlings, and wolves. All dead, all returned. They didn't walk like whites. They weren't twisted or broken. But they weren't alive either. Their eyes had no glow, just silence. Blank. Waiting. Jon looked around, breathing hard. I didn't call them. Melisandre's voice cracked. No, but something through you did. Direct address. Okay. This just flipped the entire game board. Jon Snow may have thought he was playing with fire, but he's just unlocked a door between worlds. And now, the dead don't want to stay dead anymore. The Night King backed away, not afraid, but curious. For the first time, he tilted his head like a beast evaluating a rival. He raised his arms slowly. Nothing happened. The dead didn't rise for him this time, because they'd already risen for Jon. Tormund shouted. They're not listening to him. The Night King's face twisted, not with fear, but rage. He turned his elk and vanished into the cold. Jon's resurrected army stood silent, unmoving, waiting for command. But Jon wasn't celebrating. He was terrified. That night, Jon sat by a small fire, while Melisandre stared into flames like a prisoner staring at a cell wall. This was never meant to happen, she said softly. The Lord of Light gives, but he doesn't share. You've taken power you weren't meant to wield. Jon didn't respond. He couldn't sleep, not because of fear, but because when he closed his eyes, he could hear them. All of them, the people he brought back, breathing, watching, wanting. But for what? Lyanna sat near the edge of camp, still barefoot, still untouched by the cold. Ghosts refused to go near her. When Jon finally approached, she turned slowly. I remember dying, but not what came after. Only this pull, like you were a flame and I was drawn to it. Jon swallowed hard. Do you feel alive? I feel anchored, but not living. Do you feel loyal? I feel bound. He stepped back. Lyanna didn't move. Direct address, and this right here? This is where the story stops being about survival and starts being about control. Jon didn't ask for an army, but now he might not have a choice. Back at Castle Black, word spread like wildfire. Men from Eastwatch, Shadow Tower, even beyond the wall, came to see the resurrected army with their own eyes. Some wept, some begged to be brought back. My brother died north of Hardhome. One man said, kneeling, bring him back. Please, Jon said nothing. But that night, the brother returned. And he wasn't the same. He screamed for 2 hours, clawing at his own skin, begging to return to the dark. Then silence. His eyes turned black. Melisandre ended him with fire. The next morning, Jon called a meeting. No more. No more resurrections. We don't know what's coming back. But what about the Night King? Tormund snapped. You saw what they did to your army. They feared them. They're not my army. They're ghosts bound to me by something I don't understand. One of the younger men, voice shaking, said, But you're our only chance. Jon slammed his fist on the table. Then we've already lost. Silence. Melisandre approached him later. You were not meant to lead men. You were meant to bridge worlds. Jon turned slowly. And what does that mean? It means this ends in fire, or it ends in ice. But either way, you are the weapon. Wait! That line, did you hear that? You are the weapon, not the sword, not the king, not even the savior. Jon Snow is the thing the gods themselves are using to change fate. But that fate is cracking because someone else is watching. South of the wall, Bran Stark opened his eyes. He'd seen it all, and what he saw terrified him. Should I keep going? Bran stared into the flames of the godswood tree in Winterfell, but he wasn't truly there. His eyes were clouded with visions of Jon raising the dead, of Lyanna walking barefoot through snow that didn't melt under her feet, of the Night King retreating for the first time. He blinked and whispered, He's not just a man anymore. Sansa turned to him, concern flickering in her eyes. What do you mean? He's becoming something else. Something the world hasn't seen before. Something even the Night King feared. Sansa folded her arms. Is he dangerous? Bran's voice was flat. He already is. Direct address. All right, stop right there. Just imagine being Sansa. You finally have control over Winterfell. You're keeping the North stable, and your dead brother's out there, raising other dead people. And now your other brother, the psychic time-traveling tree wizard, is telling you he's turning into something worse than the Night King? Yeah, panic time. News of Jon's power spread far beyond the wall. Stories poured into King's Landing. Tales of a man who could bring back the dead with just a touch. Of an army marching north without heartbeat or hunger. Of Lyanna Stark walking again. Cersei heard these tales from Qyburn, who studied them with morbid fascination. If true, your grace, he said, this man is either a threat or an opportunity. She leaned back on the Iron Throne. Send ravens. I want every detail. And send the mountain north. If he can die, we'll know. If he comes back, I'll have use for him. Meanwhile, Jon and his grim procession marched south of the wall for the first time since his resurrection. Not to fight, not yet, but to find answers. He went to the crypts of Winterfell. Sansa was waiting for him. She didn't hug him. She didn't smile. I heard you're raising the dead. Jon didn't deny it. She studied him closely. Are you still you? He hesitated. Mostly. That scared her more than if he'd said no. Direct address, that right there? That's the moment Sansa realizes her brother, the one who was once loyal, brave, and grounded, is now a living question mark. And she's not sure if the next move should be protect him or to stop him. Bran came out to meet Jon, eyes distant as always. They sat beneath the weirwood, snow falling silently between them. You opened something, Bran said quietly. I didn't mean to, Jon replied. You're a channel now. Something old and buried saw you cross the veil, and it followed you back. Jon looked away. They obey me, Bran. For now. But nothing from beyond wants to serve. It wants to spread. That night, Jon walked alone through the crypts, past the statues of old kings and queens, past Lyanna's tomb, now empty. He stood before Ned Stark's grave. He knelt, whispered something no one else heard, and then the ground cracked. No, wait, are you freaking out? Because yes, Jon Snow just kneeled at his father's grave, and something answered. But it wasn't Ned. It was something using Ned. A voice echoed in the chamber, not aloud, but inside Jon's head. You should not have come back. Jon gasped, staggered back. The torches dimmed. The whisper continued. The balance was already broken. You have shattered it. Ghosts whined outside the crypt. Jon stood slowly. Who are you? We are what waits in the dark, what the gods forgot, what the old powers buried beneath ice and fire. Why me? He asked. Because you tore the veil. Suddenly, the stone beneath Jon's feet burst with frost. A shadow surged up, only for a moment, before vanishing into the walls. Jon staggered out crypts, face pale as snow. Melisandre caught him before he collapsed. What did you see? She asked. He looked at her with eyes full of dread. I didn't raise the dead. I invited them. From that moment, everything changed. His army, the ones he brought back, they began to change. Not all at once, but slowly. One forgot his name. Another refused to eat, even though his stomach twisted with hunger. A third began weeping uncontrollably, whispering voices no one else could hear. Jon tried to command them, but they hesitated. Melisandre grabbed his hand. You must burn them. Jon refused. They trusted me. They don't know what they are anymore. And then one turned. In the middle of Winterfell's courtyard, his eyes went black. Not blue like the whites. Black, endless, like staring into a hole in the world. He screamed once, then charged at a child. Jon cut him down himself, and the silence that followed was colder than death. Okay, deep breath. This is where things spiral. Jon brought back dozens. Hundreds. Now they're breaking, decaying. The power that gave them life is unraveling, and it's pulling something else through with it. Bran confirmed it that night. I saw it, he said, almost in a whisper. There's a crack in the realm, like a splinter in reality itself. You brought it with you. Jon sat in silence. His hands trembled. Then he said 5 words. Jon didn't wait for counsel. By dawn, he was gone. Rode out from Winterfell without telling anyone where he was headed, without taking anyone with him but Ghost and Melisandre. The wind howled harder that day. Snow fell faster, as if the land itself was reacting. He was heading back to the wall, not to defend it, to destroy what was behind it. As they rode, Melisandre pressed him. Where are we going? Back to where it started, Jon muttered. To the place I was brought back. I think it's the only way to shut the door I opened. She didn't argue. Maybe because she saw the same thing Bran did. Maybe because deep down she knew this wasn't resurrection anymore. It was invasion. They reached Castle Black in 2 days. It was empty now, abandoned. The Night's Watch, what's left of them, had scattered when the rumors started. No one wanted to be near the place that birthed gods and corpses. Jon stepped into the room where his body had once laid. Cold, quiet, still stained with the blood he spilled. He looked at the table, at the ghost of himself, then at Melisandre. I need you to do it again. She stared, horrified. Jon, no. If I die again, maybe it closes the door. Melisandre's face turned pale. You don't know that. I don't know anything anymore. Pause. Okay, hold on. Let that sink in. Jon Snow, who has conquered death, raised armies of the dead, and stared down the Night King, is now asking to die again, on purpose, to fix what he broke. And the only person who can help him? The same woman who brought him back the first time. Melisandre trembled as she prepared the ritual again, this time against her own will. Jon laid down on the table. Same as before. Ghost whimpered and refused to leave his side. If I don't wake up, Jon said, burn me. No second chances. He closed his eyes. She began to chant. The fire flared. Time passed. Jon's chest didn't rise. 1 minute. 2. Then a gasp. But it wasn't Jon. The air in the room turned heavy. The flames died in a flash of smoke. Melisandre fell back. Choking, the door slammed shut on its own. Jon's body remained still. Then a voice filled the room. Not his. Not hers. Something else. You open the gate. We've come through. Direct address. Stop. This is the moment the entire story pivots. Jon didn't just break the veil. He became the bridge. And now, the thing that used him to return, it's speaking. And it's in the room. Melisandre screamed, leave him. The voice didn't stop. It was using John's mouth now. He belongs to us. He touched the fire. He touched the frost. He's neither now. John's eyes opened, but they weren't his eyes. They were empty. Then, for a single, terrifying second, every torch in Castle Black burst into black flame. Not heat, cold, the kind of flame that devours the soul. Melisandre hurled the bowl of blood into the fire, breaking the ritual. John gasped again, truly this time. His real voice. What did I let in? She grabbed him by the face, staring deep into his eyes. You were gone, but something else wore your skin. They both knew what that meant. It wasn't over. Not even close. The next morning, they found one of the men from John's resurrected army. He'd followed them, hoping to be fixed. But now he was dead again. For real this time. Except his body was hollow, like something had clawed its way out from the inside. John stared at it for a long time. Burn them all, he said finally. Everyone I brought back. Every last one. Melisandre nodded. That might not be enough. It wasn't, because far beyond Castle Black, deep in the ruins of Hardhome, bodies began to rise. Not whites, not walkers, something else. Not John's, not the Night King's. Something older. They stood in silence. Not decayed, not cold, just wrong. Their eyes weren't blue. They were white, blank, like fresh snow. Direct address. Okay, seriously, what even are these things? Because we just entered an entirely new kind of nightmare. The dead are rising again, but now they belong to neither John nor the Night King. This is uncharted territory. Back in Winterfell, Bran jerked awake, screamed. Arya and Sansa ran to him, but he wouldn't stop shaking. They're awake, he cried. The old ones. The ones, the children of the forest, buried in the cold before even the first men arrived. Sansa paled. What does John have to do with them? Bran looked at her with tears in his eyes. He freed them. And now they were walking toward the living. Should I keep going? John stood on the wall, wind clawing at his cloak, eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the forest. He didn't speak. He barely breathed. Below, fires crackled as Melisandre began burning the bodies of the men he had once brought back. Each flame felt like a nail in his soul. Tormund arrived just after dusk, eyes bloodshot. What in the hell happened? John didn't turn. I made a mistake. Tormund glanced at the pyres. That's a lot of dead men to burn for a mistake. They weren't just dead, Tormund. John's voice was hollow. They were opened. Something walked through them. Something ancient. It's spreading now. Tormund hesitated, then stepped forward, lowering his voice. You're saying we got a third army of the dead? John nodded. Not ice. Not fire. Something older than both. Pause right here. You thought ice zombies were bad? You thought the Night King was the biggest threat? What if I told you he was just guarding the door, keeping something far worse locked behind it? And John? John was the fool who broke that lock. Down in the crypts of Winterfell, Bran's voice was shaking as he spoke to Arya and Sansa. I tried to trace them through the weirwood, but there's no thread, no memory, no past. Arya narrowed her eyes. What does that mean? It means, Bran said, they existed before time, before the trees. They're not part of the song. Arya didn't flinch. Then we kill them. Bran shook his head. You can't kill what was never alive. Sansa's face went pale. Where are they now? Bran's eyes rolled back, and he saw them, marching toward the wall, not fast, not slow, just coming. Footsteps that cracked the snow without leaving prints. Faces that shifted and changed, like fog wearing a mask. One of them looked like a Stark, another like a Lannister, another like no man Bran had ever seen. And above them, the sky was changing color, bleeding gray, not from weather, from memory being erased. Back on the wall, John finally turned to Melisandre. You said this ends in fire or in ice. She nodded. But this is neither. He clenched his fists. Then what are they? She stared into the dark. Regret. Direct address. Okay, that line right there. They are regret? That's poetry and horror. Because now we know these things aren't just monsters. They're the consequences of Jon's resurrection. They're every soul he tore back from peace, every life disturbed, every rule broken. And now they're coming home. The north began to empty. Ravens stopped flying. People stopped dreaming. Literally, no one could sleep. When they did, they saw them standing at the edges of memory. Looking in, Jon knew what he had to do. He rode to Winterfell alone. No army, no sword, just ghost. The doors opened before he knocked. Arya met him at the gate. "You've changed," she said. "So have you," he replied. Sansa refused to come down. "He's not our brother anymore," she whispered to Bran. Bran only nodded. "No, he's something else." In the Great Hall, Jon asked Arya for one thing. "If I don't come back, end me properly this time." Arya didn't blink. "I will." That night, he descended into the crypts again, alone, and he found it, the thing that had spoken to him in the dark before. Not with a voice, with feeling. It took form now, just enough for him to see it. A shadow made of memories, faces flashing in and out. His own face, Robb's, Lyanna's, Ygritte's, all flickering like dying candles. "I didn't mean to bring you," Jon said. "You called," it replied. "I didn't know what I was doing." "You never do." Jon drew Longclaw. "I'm ending this." The shadow didn't retreat. "End us," it whispered. "But you will end with us." Pause. Hold that thought. Jon's in the crypts again, face to face with the ancient, unkillable echo of every life he disturbed. And now he's being told, "You can kill me, but you won't survive it." Question is, would he? Jon raised the sword. The air cracked. Bran screamed from above. The weirwoods all bled sap across the north. And then Jon struck. Longclaw didn't hit flesh. It hit memory. And the entire crypt exploded with light. Winterfell shook. Arya ran down, blades drawn, but the crypt was sealed. Bran collapsed in the godwood. The sky opened, not with rain, but silence. A wave of nothingness spread from Winterfell's heart, swallowing sound, flame, snow. And then quiet. They found Jon's body 3 days later. Cold, still, alone. Ghost never left his side. Sansa ordered a pyre built. Arya lit it herself. Bran refused to attend. But the flames didn't burn him. They just turned white. And when they were done, there was nothing left. No ash, no bone, no sword, just snow. Direct address. And that, my friends, is how Jon Snow ended the Third Great War before it began, by giving himself up to the thing beyond death. But what was he in the end? Man? Weapon? Mistake? Or something we were never meant to understand? Still here? Good.